Hey, what's up, guys? Did you see the report this week that revealed the leading cause of cancers? It's sex in October. See, I said cancers, not cancer, like as in astrology. All right, well, anyway, what would you say is the leading cause of a great listing inventory in the spring and summer? Now, that answer is strategy in October, specifically your lead generation strategy. So, it's almost Halloween, and this week I thought back to a specific strategy that I started many years ago in the month of October that resulted in a 98% capture rate in my geographical farm area the next year. Now, if you're not familiar with that term, it just means that for every property that sold the next year, I represented either the buyer or the seller 98% of the time. So you want to know how I pulled off near total dominance in my area? Okay, let's dig in. First, you should know that I was doing good business at the time, but I also had an intention to both double my production and dramatically increase the percentage of my business that came from listings. I knew that if I could get my business to a point where 80% of it came from listings, that I'd have incredible amounts of leverage and I'd get my time back, to be more in life than a real estate agent. And I'd already been investing time, money, and energy into a geographic farm area, so that seemed like a logical place to start. Now, to be clear, I had plenty of opportunity to buy into any number of limiting beliefs around listings, including the market is tight and there's no inventory, no one is selling. Sound familiar? Or the holidays are approaching and people don't list during the holiday season. Or how about this one? There are 6 other agents who live in my farm area. No one will ever capture the majority of the business in this neighborhood. That was a true story. Well, I swept all those thoughts aside and I started asking myself a few questions. First, I asked, what would happen if I could identify every person in this neighborhood who was even casually thinking of selling in the next year? My gut told me that I'd have a stack of future leads to develop way ahead of my competition. And the second question was, all right, how will I find these people? And in those days, the answer was painfully obvious. I'd call them. And if I didn't have their phone number, then I'd knock on their door. And that's important because the answer is still the same today. So I set an intention to speak to all 326 people in the neighborhood by December 23rd of that year. And when I reached them, I made sure I asked one powerful question. Who do you know that may be considering selling next year? See, I never had to ask the person I was speaking to if they were thinking of selling, because if they were the person thinking of selling, they'd say so. I simply had to make sure that I asked who they knew who. I mean, this part of it is so simple. You guys, like 3 people who watch will actually do this, but come on now. It's more than 3 of you have to do this. Prove me wrong, okay? Now, the third question I asked myself was, how can I support all this with marketing? And after a brainstorming session with my assistant, we decided to send a series of 6 weekly postcards that did nothing but talk about my performance in the market. So we looked through all my stats, like days on market and list to sales ratio, and we made a list of 6 performance metrics where I shined. Now, a side note here, if your individual stats stink or if you're new to the area and you don't have any, you can always use your office or your company performance numbers, because technically the clients are your broker's clients anyway, right? Now, the postcards, they had a light and a fun tone to them, and we used the Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas themes heavily. But over the course of the 6 weeks, while I was making my phone calls, the owners in the farm area were getting a look at numbers that benefited them. And what I mean is that rather than just presenting numbers as, here's why Jason's so great, we talked about why these facts benefited the seller. For example, one of the postcards stated that my list to sale ratio was 3.5% higher than average. And then it emphasized the benefit to the seller by quantifying in real dollars what that would mean to them if they sold. So if the average sales price in your area is $500,000, saying your performance on average gets sellers $17,500 more than the competition, that's 3.5% of 500,000. It has a totally different impact than just stating your list to sale ratio. I mean, come on, don't make your prospects do math. Now, on another note, before you start throwing stats around, it might be a good idea to run them by your manager or your broker to make sure you're making claims that are valid. So anyway, these days you can use postcards or paid online advertising or both. But remember, the real power in this comes from the combination of both your advertising and your personal communication. Those two things, with an intention to simply identify who is thinking of selling in 2021, will do a few things for you right now. It'll uncover people who want to sell before the end of this year that you may have missed, and more importantly, it'll keep you focused and acting on intention through what we all know is likely to be an insane fourth quarter. It'll also keep you inspired and set you up to leapfrog your competition next year. Okay guys, well I trust that this will help you take another step on your journey of building a top producer life. And it's going to be a great week. If you're watching this on Sunday, tomorrow is the photo shoot for the Top Producer Life book cover. So leave a comment before you go, and I'm going to go obsess over my outfit changes. Thanks for watching, you guys. Have a fantastic day. My name is Jason Edwards, and let's go think bigger this week.